A new report has found incidents of Islamophobia in Australia have more than doubled in the past 2 years, with a spike following the October 7 terror attack on Israel in 2023. The report, compiled by academics for the Islamophobia Register Australia, found anti-Palestinian sentiment played a part and that Muslim women were disproportionately targeted. The author of the report is Dr. Susan Carland, and she says there was a 250% increase in online Islamophobic incidents and a 150% increase in in-person attacks.
Actually the highest we've ever seen since we started recording in 2014. So that's over a 10-year period. It's the highest we've seen. And you've got to remember that those earlier periods included times when ISIS was around, after the Christchurch terrorist attack. So big events that would obviously have exacerbated social discord. It is still the highest we've seen now.
Can you take us through how you compile these numbers? Who reports in and how does this research get done?
So people will generally contact the register. They can report to us lots of different ways, phone or through social media, but the most common way is an online form that they fill in. They tell us about themselves, what happened, lots of demographic details. We then contact that person back. So we do that first of all to offer any support they might need. You need psychological support, you want us to contact police, legal support, but also so we can verify that this actually happened. So we speak to them, make sure it happened, get any extra details, and then once that happened, we will then verify again for a third time. So because we're trying to be so careful to make sure nothing dodgy sneaks through, what that probably means is there actually are reports that are genuine that are not included. So for example, if the person didn't answer the phone, we will cut it out of our analysis, which means there probably were genuine issues and incidents that happen that don't actually make it to the final report, which means this is probably an underestimation.
And further to this, there's also a lot that doesn't go reported to police as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Only 18% of people told us that they wanted to report it to the police. And when we asked them why, we can help you, we'll even do it for you if you want. They said, what's the point? No one takes this seriously and nothing will happen.
This report has a string of really concerning personal stories in it. Can you take me through some of those? You know, there were reports of one woman saying she was spat on and another reporting that an improvised petrol bomb was left on their vehicle. Can you take me through some of these stories and what kind of impact they can have on people?
We actually had quite a few devastating stories. Going through all these incidents was actually quite grim reading, I have to say. We had multiple incidents of spitting, unfortunately, and 100% of those incidents involved women. So women were the ones being spat on. We had reports of women having their headscarves ripped off. Number of violent assaults. Like you said, a genuine bomb was left at somebody's house, arson attacks, graffiti, attacks on mosques, and even with our verbal insults, which people might think are not a big deal, we had more than 200 of them, and they included insults referring to murder and rape. So these are not small things. And then obviously what our participants or what our respondents told us was that this was deeply distressing for them. 87% said it had an effect on them psychologically. Fear, sadness, despair, anger, and a number of them, a majority of them also said it had long-term effects. So they were having nightmares, they couldn't go to work, people told us they were scared to leave the house. These are not small things.
And women were disproportionately targeted in these incidents that you've reported on. Why are women subject to so much more violence and threats?
You're right. 75% of our victims were women and girls. They were overwhelmingly targeted, and that's actually been the case since 2014. This seems to be a baked-in problem. Now, the first explanation is that Muslim women are often more visible. They wear a headscarf like I do, so they stand out. But that doesn't seem to be the only cause. And we understand that because, first of all, Muslim men and boys would also report to us that they were targeted because of their appearance. If they were wearing prayer cap or robes, they had beards, they would say that was mentioned in the attacks on them. So men would also be identified. What we think is the other driving factor is actually the stereotypical attitudes that people have about Muslim women, that they are submissive, that they are docile, that they're oppressed. It creates in the mind of perpetrators that Muslim women are something of an ideally vulnerable victim. They are an easy target, basically, particularly when we compare it to the stereotypes of Muslim men, that they are violent, that they are domineering. When they're going to choose between one of the two, they're going to go for who they think is the easier victim. And so what that means is Islamophobic attitudes about women are actually creating more Islamophobic incidents.
One of the other things that has come out of this report, it was a 1,300% increase in Islamophobia recorded in the weeks after the October 7 attacks in 2023. This was obviously a very difficult time for a lot of people, but what have you found specifically when it comes to support for Palestinian people?
Yeah, unfortunately, we had a lot of reports of the conflation between anti-Palestinian hate and Islamophobia. So people would report to us saying that when they were abused, for example, one person said, I was waving a Palestinian flag and a person yelled at me, you Muslim terrorist, for example. So in the minds of perpetrators, they were conflating Islam and anti-Palestinian hate. We also found that in 2024, people who were wearing pro-Palestinian symbols like a keffiyeh, maybe they had a T-shirt of Palestine or they were waving a Palestinian flag, they accounted for 25% of the victims across the whole year. We've never seen anything like this in previous reporting, and this is obviously reflective of what's going on overseas, but also Australian sentiment here.
With these staggering numbers that you're seeing, what needs to change to be able to get a handle on this?
So we have about 28 recommendations in the report, and unfortunately what I realised is that so many of them are about handling Islamophobia after it happens. Better support for victims. What can government do? What can police do? What can schools and universities do? What I would love us to focus on is the recommendations we have about how do we prevent this in the first place. And one of the things I would love to see and the Register would love to see is some sort of dedicated campaigns to promote social inclusion, acceptance, positivity, particularly towards Muslim women, because the rates are really concerning. And this isn't just Muslim women, these are Muslim girls as well who have been targeted, often in violent attacks.